I have a question to both Eleonora and Fernando. You talk about the lithology, the organic matter, the pH, and I was wondering, in your different systems, tropical and temperate ones, did you find any soil biota that may explain the formation of the A layers in your systems? Eleanor, perhaps at first?
Yeah, biochar, you mean? Well, actually, sorry, I'm not sure I get your question. You mean biochar?
No, biota, fauna,
Okay.
organisms, fungi, bacteria, and so on.
Okay, sure. Well, we must say that we haven't made any precise evaluation of soil organisms. In some cases, of course, we had earthworms. In other, we only have small arthropods and so on. But we didn't record them actually.
Okay, thank you. And you, Fernando, in your acidic soils?
Yeah, it's the same for us. We also now have no people to work with this biodiversity and recording these enzymes or biochar in the soil.
Okay, thank you. And Sylvia, I was also wondering why you grouped the model and the amphi forms, but looking at the presentation of Anna, perhaps it may explain this.
Yes, okay, I actually, I differentiated, can you hear me now? Yes, okay. I differentiated, I know it should be better to consider all the different types separately, but the humus, the mule humus were clearly macrostructured, while the others were not. So this could be, this is just a first approximation because I didn't have all the data ready necessary to get into more detail. But of course, my objective is to try to find a bigger data set with all the possible forms and types represented. That would be much better. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia.
You're welcome.
And Anna, we have the same problem than you, yours discriminating the A and the OH layer. It's very, very difficult.
Oh yes, yeah. Even we had a good feeling in the field, like that after these 90 samples that we are good at and then it was very frustrating to see the results of the analysis.
And it's especially frustrating when you have the analytical analysis that put you just at the limit, and you can, yeah, you have to decide in which layer you put your sample.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
Claire, may I add a comment on that?
Yeah.
I think this is a classical problem we always have in soil science to distinguish between the O and the A. And I think we have to remember that when we are in the field, we actually evaluate the dominance of organic matter by volume. When instead we go in the lab, we have a percentage by weight. And so the feeling is, of course, very different. Maybe sometimes, for some purposes, it's better to look at the field evaluation instead of the threshold, which is very precise. Then this is a big problem for classification, of course, because it becomes different for each person. but indeed, I do not think it can be solved.
I totally agree with you, because in the field with students, they always sometimes keep themselves on the pH value and yes, what is written in the keys. And I always say to them, open your eyes and look around you and help yourself with your sense. This is the most important, not the chemical analysis. It may help, but it will never replace the field experience.
Sure.
Actually, may I make a comment on that? It's mostly the amphiforms where you have that problem. And in some cases, especially on calcareous substrates, I really distinguish a transitional horizon. If it occurs very frequent, then you have that. For we try to separate things linearly, and there is no strict boundary, especially if microorganisms are crossing boundaries. The only thing is, if we look at results from research experiments, forest floor changes, CO2 management, and so on, I always wonder, how can they really be sure about what they are measuring if we don't even know this boundary and line and transition? For it's really megagrams, tons of carbon per hectare, which is in this rather dense a transition horizon. So that's, yeah, maybe we should have such a transition horizon in our TerrHum app.
Yes, or you can put two horizons in the same one. We usually do this in soil description. You may have a A and a B, and in between the A, B.
Yeah, there have to be certain rules, but yeah.
Another questions or comments?
Yes. All this question about lab analysis and field analysis will really be a big issue for the Swiss revision of the classification system, because most of it will be very useful to work on the field and to have a lot of big mappings. Basically, we're trying to to map the whole Switzerland now, and it will be impossible to have lab analysis for each point. So that's a very good and interesting question from for the practical people in the field.
And we have a remark of Amina in the chat.
No, it's not Amina, it's me. It's the name of my wife.
Sorry.
Because she has already an account in Zoom, and I cannot change it. So it's from Jérôme Juiret. Yes, yeah, I think that using soil micromorphology can be very useful in such case, but you need time for that, because you have to take the sample to make the resina, make the thin section, and analyze the thin section. But it's a very good way, I think, to make the discrimination between, or to answer all these questions. And if I can continue on some comments.
Yes.
So first of all, I apologize. I have no presentation because I just joined. I'm quite new in the humus group. I met Augusto 3 years ago. We were in WRB excursion together. I am first geologist, secondly soil scientist, and now I'm trying to understand more the humipedon. And I am looking to the soil into a global approach that I call the world regolith pedology. And with Augusto, not only Augusto, but others or co-authors, we made this distinction between the humipedon, copedon, and lithopedon. So I elaborate a key of lithopedon classification.
Okay.
I am in the WRB board, and I am joining you as well now.
Welcome.
Thank you. A comment also, you spoke, Claire, about the parent material.
Yes.
And so it comes to what I am more specialized. And so I will be happy to share a discussion with you about the Fluvisol, and I don't remember what you told, the scree.
Yes, and
I'm
also the lithosol.
Yes, and the scree from the
Yes.
cliff. I am from Jura Mountain, so I will know
so you know.
the problem, and I will know the humus incorporated into this. So, and also it was, let me look, Eleonora spoke also about lithology. And my question is, why speaking about lithology and not the soil? I mean, the soil itself. I mean, the soil in the soil classification point of view, regosol, luvisol, or whatever. Is it because you don't have the maps for your study of the soil maps that you use geological maps? It's easier, or
No, indeed, all these soils were described and analyzed and classified during a project some years ago. So we did not rely on maps. We do have real classification of soils.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, the purpose was not to link the type of soil with the humus form, because, for example, in this area there are differences. There are also paleosols. There are plenty of things that are more linked to the mineral soil phase, so to the clay and so on. Then, and indeed, the purpose was to use the factors of soil formation. So this was lithology, this was the soil parent material. And at some stages, the effect of the soil parent materials is still visible in the humus form. In other cases, it's not. Obviously, it depends on soil development. But the soil, the soil variability was too large to see a real pattern. In that case, the factors were better for describing the pattern.
And from my side, we also know the name of the soil. We have some fluvial soils in floodplains. We have perrosoils, we have regosoils, and so on. And the classification of Augusto et al. 2011 has the property to take into account the parent material with the antiforms. And we had peroforms, lithoforms, and psamoforms, and psamophore sand. And it is especially important in, for instance, floodplains, where I work a lot, because you have a lot of mules, usually humus, and the sand is very, very important in a functional approach of the humipedo, as well as in lithosoil with the rock at the bottom of the lithopedo. So we in the recent classification, we only take into account mostly the biological parameters. But as Eleonora said, we must take into account all the factors implied in the pedogenesis. That's why I would like to re-put in the classification the importance of not only the organic matter, the soil organisms and so on, but also the parental material.
Yeah, I understand, but because I remember this discussion with Augusto and Jean-François Ponge, and I was not in favor, and I explained because I think that you should not classify according to other classification. So if you want to classify your humus and you need the classification of another thing before, I was not so happy of that. I think it should be, it's like, I remember discussion also to classifying and say if we have a RE horizon or E horizon below. And I remember saying, no way, for me, it's not logical in classification process to use another. You should be able to classify only based on what you see, not on something that is below. But it's a discussion that we can still have, no problem. Because I think that in the world regolith approach, this is why also I speak about the humipedon, the copedon, and the lithopedon, or the subsolum that I call, is that you should be able to classify the entire regolith with this tree system and using them as complementary. So you should be able to say, I have a mule over sapolite, for example, or over scree, but independently. But we can continue the discussion or open something on that. I will be very happy to participate. Also, how do you, for example, how do you classify in scree when you have your humus is every year covered by new material, and your humus,
you have an A layer inside. So if you have an A layer, you have a functional system, and the presence of pads, rocks, and so on influence the functioning of the humus forms. That's why taken into account the parental material is very important. If you have a lot of coarse sand in floodplains, you will not have the same soil organisms, especially earthworms, than in a site where you have a lot of silt, you know? So even in rough ecosystems, we need to take into account this parental material. But we can discuss together, yes.
Yes, also just last remark, also what do we do with a BH horizon? Is it a humus horizon?
No. Or the G one is.
Ciao.
But it's an open question for me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question or remarks or comments? Okay. Nothing in the chat. So I propose to see us together tomorrow, if you agree. Thank you for coming. We hope Augusto will be there tomorrow. Have a nice afternoon, everyone, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you,
See you.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you tomorrow. Bye bye.